Okay. It's 7 o'clock, everyone. I think everyone's here. I'll just double check. So Councillor Little, I think he was going to attempt to beam in. I might actually, yeah, so might just give it a couple of minutes and then we'll get started at around about 7:02. Thanks, everyone. Okay, I think we might get started, everyone. I think we've got the live stream happening. So I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening for this ordinary council meeting. My name's Karen Redmond. I'm the Mayor of the town of Gawler. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to anyone who's viewing on YouTube. I can't see you, but welcome all the same. I think we have everyone here except Councillor Little, who did say he was going to try and beam in, but if he didn't, he wished us well. So, oh, hang on. Oh, that's somebody else. That's not Councillor Little, that's Mr. White. So I will, Kate, I think we will put Councillor Little down as an apology unless he does beam in at some point. He is up in the Flinders Ranges somewhere with the RSL, having a fantastic time, I'm sure. Very important work that he does. Roll call, so I think everyone is here. Welcome to all elected members this evening. Is there any motions to grant leave of absence elected members? Can't see any hands going up, so we'll keep moving. I'd like to welcome staff here this evening, CEO Henry Innett, and also some invited guests, and I'll just go through some of our invited guests, and apologies if I do miss anyone. We have Trevor White from Planning Solutions. We have Mr. Kevin Fisher, board member of the Gawler Business Development Group, who has a deputation this evening. We have Karen Braum, who's the business coordinator for the Gawler Business Development Group. We have Louise, where are you, Louise? You there or are you gone? Oh, there you are. Louise Drummond, who's the chair of the Gawler Business Development Group. Have I missed anyone? I don't think I have. Welcome everyone to this this evening's meeting. So there's no non-attendance. There's no public open forum while we're on electronic meetings. And now, so we'll move to item 4, which is deputations. Now, Kevin, Mr. Fisher, you have asked to do a deputation for this evening. I'll give you, there is 5 minutes. So if I'll give you a 30-second warning, Kevin, when you're up. Hopefully, I'm sure you're usually quite concise. So hopefully that's enough time for you. So welcome, Kevin Fisher.
Thank you to Mayor Redman, elected members and council staff, and of course the other people listening out there on YouTube. As you explained, I'm a member of the Gawler Business Development Group Board and presented to the last special meeting of council on that Thursday a week and a half ago. Just following up from that particular meeting, we requested that there be rate remissions and not just waiving of the rates. And the decision that was made, it was quite a complicated 17 points, I think, to that particular decision. And maybe that was the reason why my address perhaps didn't make its way into that particular decision, and that being that the Gawler Business Development Group would like to be there to set the criteria, or assist council to set the criteria for any rate remissions, or at least accessing that fund that was put aside for all of the businesses that have been impacted through this COVID-19. We are concerned, one of the other points we did make was that we are concerned that the amount of money put aside, we don't believe is going to be sufficient for rate remission across the council area. Our focus, of course, is for the Gawler businesses that at the moment are not even opening their doors due to the restrictions placed upon them, and of course those that will struggle to start up again. So I have taken the opportunity in the last week to talk to just about all of the elected members to express my concern. I think there is a notice on motion, as well as a motion that wasn't addressed at the last meeting from Councillor Tooley that goes towards the hope that we, the Gawler Business Development Group, can be there assisting council to set that criteria for those rate remissions. I'm also available for any questions if anyone has any in this regard. And yes, that's pretty well it, Karen. We are really concerned about the businesses that, and there is quite a few of them that sit there and have not earned any money. They have no income. They still have outgoings, and some of those outgoings are the council rates. So we would like to see those business council staff, so that council staff and any other members of any working group, to try and make sure that all of those businesses are supported. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Are there any questions?
I hope to address the issues you've mentioned in my motion when it comes up, Kevin and Karen, but from your contact with the businesses, do you have any sort of data on the numbers in terms of the numbers of businesses that are really struggling? I mean, we know that some businesses, your big ones like your Coles and your Woolies, have actually done, it appears, quite well, because that's just been the nature of things. But a lot of businesses, the small ones in the main street, is quite obvious they've been struggling. So just wondering, from your context, do you have any data around the numbers that are struggling, and to what extent?
Thank you for that question, Ian. What I might do, if it's possible, Karen, can I refer to Karen Braum, as she has more up-to-date information. She has been collecting the data. I do have some anecdotal stuff from some of the conversations that I have had with businesses, but I'll pass over for the exact data, if you like, or the numbers. Karen would be the best one to answer that specifically, if that's okay, Karen.
That's fine. Thanks, Kevin. Yes, Ian, we do have, our numbers are growing daily. So we're in constant contact with as many businesses as we possibly can. And as you can imagine, some of those contacts are repeat because of the the depth of their issues at the moment with their businesses. But we estimate from the businesses that we've spoken to that probably at least 30% of the businesses within the region are struggling severely. And that means that some of those businesses, that 30%, just may not be able to reopen, depending on when, of course, all of the restrictions are lifted. We've seen, obviously, the early lifting of movement from level 1 to level 2 next week. So that's made some difference. And the changes yesterday increasing the number of patrons allowed in a pub has gone from 20 to 80, so long as they're in discrete areas, of course. So that's going to make a massive difference, because if it had stayed at the 20 that was predicted, then I think we may have seen quite a few pubs within the Gawler region, as well as cafes, not being able to continue. That being said, there are still going to be some. We know there are some who are not going to reopen. We won't name any of those, of course, at the moment. And as well as that, there are just general retailers that we know are not going to be able to reopen. A couple are looking at selling. Some have already decided that it's just too much and they may walk away. So, however, none of those numbers are definite yet, because everything is up in the air. The businesses don't know, just like the rest of us, from day to day, what is actually going to happen. And so therefore, everybody is sort of trying to ride it out and to see what they might be able to do. Yeah, so on numbers, I'd say 30% are really struggling.
Thanks, Karen. I might go to Councillor Davies.
Yeah, so my question was around the, I guess the long-term changes, as you were saying, like, I know that as part of the motion, council has moved back the finalisation of its agenda to August, because we're trying to adjust. So are you likely to have different scenarios of how much help businesses need based on, for example, when the level 3 sort of restrictions, come into effect, and that, for example?
Yes, Cody, that's exactly right. The depth or the depth of information or assistance that businesses are going to require from one business to another changes completely depending on the maturity of the business, how long they've been going and whether they've been able to plan well enough for these unforeseen circumstances, and also the type of business, the nature of the business. So as you know, we have an abundance of beauty trades within the Gawler area. I know for sure that there's some of those that possibly are not going to get through this. There are some who are having intensive assistance at the moment. We have 26 different businesses at the moment who are undergoing intensive assistance. Then what I mean by that is they're getting business coaching, they're having peer-to-peer coaching sessions, they're having sessions with lawyers, accountants, leasing specialists, HR specialists, people just regarding stimulus packages. So it's rare that we're seeing a business want one form of assistance. They're looking at multiple forms of assistance to enable them to be able to try and look at rebuilding, or recovering and rebuilding.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this time? I think we might keep moving. Thank you, Kevin Fisher and Karen Braum, and of course Louise Drummond, who's the chair as well of the Gawler Business Development Group. But thank you for that deputation. Now, we move on to declarations of interest, councillors. Are there any declarations of interest? I have Councillor Goldstone. Just bear with me. Kelvin, you've moved. There we go. Kelvin?
Yep. Item 11.3, which is my variation request.
Yeah. What's the nature of your
It's a perceived conflict due to being a member of Council's assessment panel who considered the land division application should the owner's request be approved tonight. And I'll be leaving the meeting for that particular item.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest, councillors? Councillor Hughes, I see your hand up. I think. Hold on. No, you've moved. You've jumped around. God.
Yes, same item, 11.3. As member of the council's panel, I'm only a deputy member. So at this stage, I'll stay in the meeting for this item.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if I am then called upon as a deputy and I'm actually, you know, in the unlikely circumstance that it comes up, I'll declare an interest at the meeting itself and maybe leave the room then. But I'll leave that open because see what happens.
Thank you. Councillor Shanks. Okay, let's try that again. There you go. There you go, Nathan.
Yes, I'd probably follow suit. Same item. I'm a deputy along with Councillor Hughes. I will be staying in the meeting, and if anything comes up, I'll assess.
Thank you. I've got 2 items to declare an interest in, and that being 6.3 and 11.7. And as the chair of the Greater Adelaide Region of Councils and also a board director of the LGA, I'll be leaving the room for those 2 items. Lovely, thank you, Kate. Any other declarations of interest? I can't see any, so we'll keep moving. Thank you. So now we move on to adjourned items, and our first adjourned items is notice of motion, Councillor Tooley, Julian Terrace toilets. Councillor Tooley, do you wish to present your motion, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What I'm suggesting in this motion, members, is not new. I made these suggestions about whether we could incorporate a cafe space or a community space when we had the workshops back in 2018 and 2019, when we began to look at that whole space of Julian Terrace, moving of the toilet. So I think Mr. Delena said at the last meeting that he felt that this was perhaps, you know, a bit unexpected. Well, I would just like to remind him and everyone that I put these suggestions to us at those workshops. Also in 2018 and 2019, I sent emails to Mr. Delena and also to all of the members. I CC'd you in with some designs of what I'd seen in my travels as some rather impressive community spaces which added value to toilets. And I first submitted this particular motion back in February, but it's been deferred until now. And I did that when the report came back, which presented what we see before us as a pretty simple toilet block, which takes up about 3 or 4 parking spaces on Julian Terrace. And that's it. There was some discussion in a previous meeting as to whether we'd apply for a grant to enhance the disabled toilet facility, but that was not back. Members, if we sign off on that, we need to remember that the administration, when criticism comes, the administration will say, well, council endorsed it. I'd just like to remind us that we are the ones responsible. We're elected to make decisions. Administration operates on our behalf. We're not the servant of the administration. And so when administration does the work and brings something to us, if we simply rubber stamp it and it becomes the decision, administration to the day they die will say, when criticism comes, that's what council decided. That's what council decided. Now, the reason I submitted those designs and put those suggestions is not because I want to dominate the discussion, but I feel that it's our job to actually do just that. Think about what's best interest for our town. Julian Terrace and Apex Park is our premium boulevard. And you may have seen even some pretty simple examples. If you've been to Kersbrook Park, which is part, I think, of Salisbury, you'll see down there, and it's a very much loved park along the Little Para River and near the Old Spot Hotel. And there's a large community space. They don't have a cafe in there, but what they do, they allow community groups to book it. So that if you've got a family gathering or reunion, which people would like to do in Apex Park, then that's a place you can prepare your food, you can boil your urns, you can do your preparations. And that's what I've been suggesting since back in 2018 and 19, that we've got an opportunity here to do something much better than just relocate a set of toilets. And so what I've been asking since February in this motion, but I've been suggesting before that, is that we actually revisit that design and don't just simply sign off on it. We could do something a lot better in that boulevard area. The space that we add to the toilet blocks could be a community space that they could book, but it also could have the potential for one day for an entrepreneur in Gawler to put a cafe there, and it would, I would imagine, do very, very well. The only cafe that's close by used to be Conversations Cafe, and that's no longer a business. That was on the opposite side of the road. But I'm sure many of you have traveled to places and you walked and said, wow, look at the amenity. Look at that. That is fantastic. Beautiful spot, lovely cafe, beautiful ambience. We've got the opportunity to do that in our boulevard and provide something that's really enhancing for that area, for the town of Gawler. So that's the purpose of my motion, is that we actually take control of this and request that we get something better designed for our community. So I hope that you would support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tooley. Now, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Vallelonga. Do you speak, Councillor Vallelonga, as a seconder?
No, that's okay.
That's okay. Okay. Any discussion? Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support the motion. All we're talking about here is investigating a possibility, and to see someone like a cafe owner like Jim Vallelonga second it, you know, it's even putting his business aside and saying, look, let's have a look at this, and if this can enhance that area, why not investigate it? If we come back with a report that says, you know, we can run through and it's not feasible, well, we can address it then. That's not what this motion is actually discussing. So yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see what comes back of it.
Thank you, Councillor Shanks. Councillor Koch.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll be voting against this motion. We've had ample opportunity to look at the design. As Councillor said, he did submit his designs and ideas. People did look at those, and there was ample opportunity for that to be placed into the design. We're at a point now where we need to get on with the actual construct, you know, to tender it and get construction happening. I think this would just draw out the process. If you look at Kersbrook, it's Kersbrook Park actually. If you actually look at there, yes, there is facilities there, but there's also those facilities already at Apex Parks. There's a barbecue, there's shelters, there's the playground. Those facilities are already there, so people can actually use them now. I am concerned about if you're going to set up a cafe that in competition with local businesses, and I understand, you know, Jim has seconded this, but you know, that does put pressure on local cafes. There's other cafes in the main street as well. So for me, I think we've already made the decision. I think we just move on with it, because what we've decided will fit neatly into that envelope. And what we really want to do is just put new toilets down there, and we already have those community facilities already at Apex Park. So I think that's why I'm not voting for this, and I would like us to just move on and you know, move ahead with, you know, getting it tendered and getting built. Thank you.
Any other speakers for or against? There'll be none. I'll go back to you, Councillor Tooley. You want to close the debate?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just picking up a couple of points from Councillor Koch. I have consistently done exactly what an elected member should do, and I have suggested this consistently from back in 2018 and 2019. Nothing new. I've been doing that, but it just hasn't been listened to. And I've gone beyond that. I've actually sent in designs and concepts. And so I've done what an elected member can do, which is why I was so surprised that even in an earlier report, Mr. Delena did mention in an earlier report, when you look back, that it talked about the cafe space. And it's not about us setting up in business. We lease out the Faster Pasta. We don't run it. We own the building and they lease it. Even in the Civic Centre, we don't run the cafe, but we provided the space for the cafe to run. We're already in that world. And so what we'd be doing here is simply creating the space. It would be up to whoever rents that from us. Hopefully an entrepreneurial local business would rent it and say it's viable down the track to run a cafe. That's we're not competing with local businesses. We're actually providing opportunities for our local businesses to use such a space. So that's it. I'll leave it up to the decision of the elected members. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The debate's closed. That motion, all those in favour of the motion, please click yes. All those against, please click no. Thank you. Councillor Valalonga, you haven't voted. Councillor Valalonga, you haven't voted. Okay. Okay, who hasn't voted? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councillor Valalonga, you haven't voted. You've clicked your hand. Can you click yes or no? Jim, you need to vote. I can't see you vote, Jim. Where'd you go? Okay, thank you, Jim. So the motion is lost. Thank you. So moving on to 6.2, Councillor Shanks, I'll just unmute you. If you'd like to present your motion, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this one was one that got adjourned, obviously, from the last meeting. It's pretty self-explanatory. I got a bit of help from staff regarding it. I was looking at a renegotiation, but it's very good to see that we're actually going for a waiver of the 2.4 million contribution required for the Gawler Link Road, with the reallocation of those funds to be injected back into the community. So yeah, look, it doesn't hurt to test the waters with it, with the way the government's going and everything like that. You know, it would be a very good thing to redirect that 2.4 million. So that's what my motion's trying to do. Yeah, pretty basic, and yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Shanks. Now, Councillor Davies, your first cab off the rank.
Yeah, happy to second it.
A second, you wish to speak?
Yeah. Look, this is something that when we were going through the budget, looking for trying to cut, $2 million in capital expenditure and all of that, we sort of the big obvious thing that stood out was there's a huge 2.4 million contribution towards the Eastlink Road that we currently are not able to do anything about, which is a pretty huge proportion of any council budget. And then yeah, with all the COVID-19 stuff, we've been trying to cut back on costs and redirect things into the community, and this is sort of a really clear example of something that if we could just get some help from the government on this, then I think it would really help us be able to put that back into our community.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. So then I'll take Councillor Hughes and Councillor Fraser, and then Councillor Tooley in that order. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd support this motion. I mean, it may not come out exactly as we hope for, but I think it's worth raising it with the Minister, and something like Tibber Road or other investigations for other works that could help Gawler, I think is something. So I think it's very important to have these discussions with the Minister, so he understands that the Gawler community needs some assistance, but also to look at other projects that money could go to. I'm suggesting maybe investigating Tibber Road link through from Potts Road, or other projects that can assist us as a town with that money. I think it would be great. So yeah, happy to support the motion.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Fraser.
I'm with Councillor Shanks. Originally, I thought we might be able to get this deferred, or even just half of it deferred by 12 months, which would help us out with the COVID-19. But if staff can get it waived, that would be fantastic. But then I guess we can always be open for negotiation if that doesn't come to fruition. This motion.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Tooley.
Mayor, two questions first, Mayor. Is it true that the 2.4 million that we're looking at comes from developer contributions?
No, this is our contribution. Developer contributions are separate. Now, Mr. Delina, where are you? Where are you, Sam? Oh, there you are. Have I got that right?
That's council's contribution to the project, and primarily, I mean, there's a long history behind this, but effectively primarily related to the 50% of the cost to upgrade Potts Road. So that was really the basis behind the negotiation and where that 2.4 landed.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Tooley, you've got the floor.
So we're definitely dealing with money which is coming from council's own budget provisions. Yes,
it's a requirement as part of the deed to pay the 2.4 to the government.
Okay, good. Thank you. That clarifies that for me. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other hands up, so Councillor Shanks, you can close the debate. Thank you.
Yeah, Cody pointed out a couple of good points there that I should have picked up on. And yeah, we're not open for negotiation, Di. This is what we want. But look, I think this will be a very good direction, and the flow-on effect that we could potentially get by having a waiver of 2.4 million would just be. It would be fantastic. So yeah, we'll look forward to your support on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Shanks. The debate's closed. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please click yes. All those against, please click no. It is carried unanimously. Thank you. So moving on to item 6.3, I'll be declaring an interest in the matter. It's a perceived interest as Chair of GARUP and also as a Board Director of the LGA. I will be leaving the room, and Councillor Davies has kindly agreed to chair while I'm out of the room. So David Barrett, if you'd like to, thank you very much. I'll remove myself from the room.
All right. So let's see. So the mayor's in the waiting room. Great. Let's get started then. So notice of motion. Councillor Tooley, would you like to present your motion? Hold on, I'm unmuting you. There you go.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Is this democracy, guys, when an elite group like Garrock or the LGA executive can decide what can and cannot be debated by the membership? And this is your LGA, where a resolution that a member council, us, spends considerable time developing, and we achieved a unanimous support. We submit it to the full membership to consider at the OGM, only to have that resolution vetted by a small group who decided what the membership can and can't get to debate on the floor. I'm outraged, and I hope you are. The power of veto allows this group, Garrock, and the LGA executive to block anything that they don't like. Now, this isn't just the principle of this motion. It's not just that this is Ian Tooley's motion and, well, we don't like what Ian Tooley presents. Put that aside. This is about democracy and us unanimously putting a motion to Garrock because we were told that's how it has to go through to get to the AGM and the OGM. The first time we put one through, Garrock completely blocked it. It never even got past them. This second time that we've done it, we unanimously agreed that we wanted the 75 members of the LGA to make the decision as to whether they want to support our motion. Now that is democracy. What's happening with the LGA executive and Garrock, for which we pay over $35,000 a year, what this means is that any council, us or any other, we can work our butt off to get a unanimous decision. And we say, we want the membership, the 75 members, to decide. We do not want an elite group. That's what happens in dictatorships. That's what happens in communist China. They decide what will or will not go through. Now, it is absolutely outrageous. And it's not as if this is even contentious. It's not like it's a motion that's saying, you know, something like we do or we don't support something happening in the state of Palestine. We're not dealing with something out there on that side. We're dealing with something that's very real to us here in this country and in our world. And we're also saying to the LGA membership, the 76 members, we're saying to them, we want you to join the LGA of Western Australia, the LGA of Northern Territory, New South Wales, Victoria, ACT, and the upper house in South Australia, and the other 18 councils in South Australia, and the hundreds in Australia, and the thousands worldwide, to send a very strong message. We wanted our LGA to declare a climate emergency, not to just support the ones that have done it. We want them to declare a climate emergency. That's what we said. We want you to declare a climate emergency because that's a very powerful message to government, and it's a united stand and it's strong leadership. And then we wanted them to develop a climate emergency action plan. They vetoed it. Garrock said, we're not going to allow that. We are not going to allow the 75 members of the LGA who are big enough and ugly enough to make their own decision. I can live with it if the Gawler motion, this isn't mine, if the Gawler motion gets to the floor of the AGM or the OGM and the members say, we don't like it. I can live with that. That's democracy. But we should not live with an elite group that can make that decision like a nanny state and say, oh no, we are not going to let that go through because we've decided we don't want the LGA to declare a climate emergency. So we, as Garrock, we are not going to let that go through for a democratic decision on the floor of the OGM or the AGM. Now that is outrageous. And that is not what we paid our money for. So I hope you'll join me in sending a strong message that says, if we support this, Garrock, we don't have any confidence in you. We want you to change. Your job is not to veto decisions, whether it's Onka Paringa, whether it's Charles Sturt, whoever puts a motion up that gets to the floor and the membership decides. Imagine here if my motion or Nathan Shank's motion or any of those had never got to the agenda because an elite group in Gawler had said, no, don't like it, we would be outraged. We'd say that breaks all the rules.
30 seconds.
Exactly what Garrock are doing. And so I hope you'll join me in sending a very strong message. And Mr. Davies, I will be calling a division on this. I'm letting you know that now because sometimes once we've voted, people move on quickly and you don't get the symbol up. So I'm just letting you know that I will be calling for a division. I want a record of how this gets voted. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a seconder for the motion? Looks like Councillor Shanks. Would you like to speak on that one?
I actually just had a question. Am I?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I just also looking at tonight's agenda, item 11.7 is a 4-point report that if we endorse, we are actually chasing the same direction that we've tried 2 times before, as Councillor Tully's pointed out. What's the council's thoughts on that, in particular the author Tim Kelly? You know, why do we think this time's any different?
Is there someone on staff that want to respond to that?
Good evening. It's Tim Kelly here. What can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so we wrote a staff briefing paper in response to some correspondence that Mayor Redmond had received from the LGA advising or asking the question of whether they wanted the amended Garrock motion to be put to the LGA, I forget the exact term, the Board of Directors, and to be considered in that form. But we actually felt that the amended motion did not reflect the original intent of the council of the Town of Gawler's motion. So we prepared a report suggesting that we do put up the original motion, incorporate a suggestion from the Garrock motion, but really reflect on the intent of what we were seeking originally. Naturally, these two matters are connected. What we also did in that response was really explain the role of local councils, of peak organisations like the LGA, of state government, of federal government, in getting behind the climate emergency movement, which is about local, state and global action on climate change. So we felt that it was an opportunity to respond to the LGA in a way that better communicates why we wanted them to play a leadership role in declaring a climate emergency and developing a climate emergency action plan for their actions. That is why we wrote the report. It would achieve a similar outcome. I guess it doesn't address the process issues that Councillor Tully is mentioning.
All right, so we'll look, still need a second, and then if that was just a question. Councillor Kosh, are you seconding, or are you wishing to ask a question?
I've got a question. That's not seconding. I've got a question.
Yeah.
Now the question, I just listening to what Mr. Kelly just said. Reading that letter from the LGA, to me it says that they're actually asking for the Garrock motion to go to the directors, not our motion. So I just want to know what the process is. Is it something that we actually can't do because we're in a democracy and we've accepted the process that we've got, and you know, we're happy with that, I suppose, and that's the process that everyone's happy with. And now we're trying to circumvent that process. Is that a bit? I don't know. It sounds a bit odd that we're talking about democracy and then we're actually trying to circumvent democracy because we're actually saying we want to go around a system that we've actually agreed to. So can I just get a comment on that?
Is that, so Ryan? Yep.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to provide some comments on that. Yeah, look, I think that the system is and the process is one issue, and the way that we the administration have looked at it is that this provides us with an opportunity to really voice our thoughts and, as Tim said, and advocate for our position a final time. Obviously, all member councils have the ability to put forward motions to the LGA, and for those motions to be, and for councils to request that those motions be put to the LGA membership. It's really now a decision for the LGA administration and its board of directors as to what they do with that request. That's part of the process. We are, as I suppose Councillor Tooley flagged, we are somewhat restricted by how they process it, but we thought this would be another opportunity for us to reinforce and advocate for our position, to make sure that the motion that we hope to get presented to the LGA is consistent with the motion that was adopted by council.
Okay, and did you have a follow-up question, Councillor Koch?
I do. I do. I mean, just reading the letter from the LGA, to me, it says that, you know, it's only the motion that go to Garrett. Have administration received any advice whether it's actually possible to send a motion directly to the directors? Because that's the issue here. You know, we actually have got a process. It's a democratic process. We've all agreed to it, and now you're trying. It sounds like, you know, trying to go around the process for one reason or another. But is it actually possible to do that? Because if it isn't possible, we're barking up a tree at the moment.
CEO.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to clarify that the conversation that we're having at the moment is actually in relation to 11.7, which then pertains to the previous motion of Gayrock, whether the information presented in 7.11 by way of an alternative motion, is that fair and reasonable, which is the questioning by Councillor Koch. I just want members to be clear that that's distinct from this item 6.3.
All right. And let's see. So we still need a seconder for this motion to go anywhere. So I'll give it. Councillor Vallelonga, did you wish to speak to it?
No, I'll second it.
Okay. Well, in that case, that opens it up to the floor. If you wish to speak, Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, look, so the way that I look at this is every time we put up a motion to our administration and the wording is not quite right, or if something gets disagreed with, it's met with an alternate and the negotiation and everything like that. Every time we get to a point where it's like, no, that's what the motion I want to put up. In the end, I'm looking at 11.7 as us putting our foot down and saying, look, we respect the advice we're given, but this is the motion we want to put up. I'm seeing 11.7 as that. I might be wrong in my thinking in that, but, you know, turning around and saying, look, I want to call a no confidence, I sort of parallel that to wanting to call a no confidence in council administration with my short experience in council. That's how I relate. And if I turn around and say, oh, you know, I didn't get my motion, I'm getting my motion questioned, I want to call a no confidence, I feel like that would alter the outcome, in my opinion. So, yeah, look, I won't be supporting this just because I feel like 11.7 is trying to get our message across, and that is the end game. But yeah, I can see where Councillor Tooley's frustration comes from. But yeah, that's just the way that I look at it.
All right, do we have any other speakers on this motion? Oh, we've got Councillor Fraser.
Yes, I won't be voting for this motion because, like Councillor Shanks, I prefer 11.7. In all fairness, this motion that Councillor Tooley's put up has probably resulted in 11.7, the report being written. And it's not that I think it needs to go back and be looked at again, but I prefer the wording in 11.7.
All right, anyone else? If not, Councillor Tooley, oh no, Councillor Shanks, you've already spoken, haven't you? Did you have a question or?
Yeah, sorry, I just did have a question. My thoughts on that, can I just get that clarified? Am I thinking along the right terms there, Henry?
Yes, that's correct. In terms of council administration thinking about its original motion, then what feedback we did receive through GAROC. Yes, I accept what Councillor Kosh is saying and that it's a little bit unconventional in this alternative wording, but the administration felt that it was more reflective of council's original motion and the intent. And in terms of advocating for that position, we thought we'd take this approach. Ryan Viney did speak with the LGA Secretariat today to further confirm that position and whether or not and how the LGA would treat the alternative wording here and how it would be processed through the LGA. So Ryan might be able to clarify some further particulars, but it is the administration seeking to further advocate on the council's position.
Okay, so Councillor Goldstone.
Yeah, look, I'll be voting against the motion. I don't think it's appropriate to look at passing a motion of no confidence in GAROC, which we're a member of. I think it's far better covered in item 11.7, which seems like an appropriate motion. So yeah, I'll be voting against this motion.
All right, so if no one else wishes to speak, then Councillor Tooley has the opportunity for a final word.
Thank you. Look, to be clear, and I hope this might even sway some people, perhaps Councillor Shanks, that's the two issues are completely separate. 11.7, I support it, and we'll talk about that later. It is essentially the motion I originally put that we worked up, and a lot of material to support that has been provided in previous submissions that have gone in. This motion at 6.3 is about the principal members. If Councillor Shanks or Councillor Tooley or Councillor Fraser puts a motion, because this example has been used, our administration has to put it on the agenda unless it's totally illegal. You know, breaches some rule and says, okay, we're breaching disability rules or something. What happens is, if the administration has an issue with that motion, they will come back to me or to Councillor Shanks or Councillor Fraser, and they may suggest some wording. And we may or may not listen to that. We may feel that what they've suggested changes the intent of our motion, and we may reject it, in which case the motion will come before us for debate. Now, if you go back to the last motion where we overturned the distribution of confidential materials, I put that motion up. I know the administration didn't like it, but I put it up, it got on the agenda. Democracy took its place. Councillor Shanks suggested that it could be toned down a little. I listened to what he said. I thought it made good sense, and I modified, and we then voted and we got it across the line. But the whole of us had the opportunity to debate that. GAROC did not at any point come back to me or to Gawler Council and say, can we negotiate with you? This is the point that's really different. And you need to understand that. GAROC said, We will decide to change the wording. They then put it on the agenda. And I asked questions, when and did we ever get any communication? And we didn't get any communication. They put it on there. They put an officer's report with it, a watered down version, and they put their officer's report in it. And that would have gone to the OGM. Now, COVID changed that. And so we've had an opportunity, and I thank Tim and Ryan for resurrecting my motion. And that's essentially what we're going to look at later. And we've got an opportunity now to send it to the AGM. But that is separate to the principle here, members. This is the principle that we're saying we do not accept an elite group like Garrock or even the LGA executive, because that's what happens now. They have the right to block a motion even coming before the members. The 75 members may never ever know that a motion was put from Charles Sturt, from Playford, from Salisbury, from Gawler, because it gets cut off at Garrock or Sarrock or the LGA exec. Can you not see that that is not democracy? We should not be spending $35,000 to support that. If we, in a democratic way, if we produce a motion and we're unanimous, we want that to be debated by the membership. We don't want it to be watered down. We don't want it to be edited. It's our right. If it falls over on the floor of the OGM and the AGM because they say, we don't like it and we only get 20% supporting it, we have to live with that, and we will. That's democracy. But we should not be allowing Garrock, and if you support my motion, Garrock won't fall over, but what we'll do, we'll send a strong message. And if you remember a couple of years ago, there were councils sending strong messages. They were going to pull out of the LGA. They were sick of what was going on around the time of Onkaparinga and Rosenthal. And they listened and they got their act together and they made changes. And a lot of those councils who were thinking of pulling out decided to stay. And that's what we're saying here. This isn't good enough. If we support this motion, we're saying no. If we unanimously come up with a decision, we expect it to get on the agenda and then we want our members to deal with it. Now, I don't know how you can not support this motion. It's separate to 11.7. We will deal with that because we're prosecuting our case. But here, we're sending a message on principle and process. So I would hope that you would support it, guys.
All right, so all discussion has closed and now it comes to a vote. So please vote. Okay, let's see, has everyone voted? I think so. The vote has not passed. And I believe Councillor Tooley wanted to have a division, so we will move a division and vote again. Okay, and so I think what I meant to do here is call out who's voted for what. So in favour is Councillor Vallelonga, Councillor Sample and Councillor Tooley. Against is Councillor Hughes, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Goldstone, Councillor Kosh and Councillor Shanks. The motion has failed. And now we can bring the mayor back in.
Okay, so now we're on to 6.4 and I'm on page 8 of 113. Now, there's a couple of things in this before I hand over to you, Councillor Tooley. On item 4, I previously corresponded that I can't accept the last area of that item 4 in regard to the parking fund, and there was consensus that that would be removed. I can't see it, Kate. Kate, I can't see. Can you just scroll that up a little bit? That's possible. Okay, so in part 4, I can't accept e.g. areas like the 450,000 parking fund, and that was previously accepted that that would be removed. And I would also suggest taking out point 7 no later than the 12th of May, because that's clearly we're after the 12th of May. So I'm happy to accept the rest of it, Councillor Tooley, with those little bits removed. You've got the floor, Councillor Tooley.
Thank you, Meg. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This motion has been here for some time. For Council Admin's first attempt, as we know, we'll call that COVID number 1. That was presented to us on April the 7th. I unfortunately got cut off mid my second question, and I didn't get an opportunity to engage in the debate before that was closed. I would have argued very strongly against COVID number 1, mainly because of the deferral issue. They're saying that we'll just defer rates and fees and charges for 6 months. Council Admin's second attempt, we'll call that COVID number 2, was presented at the special council meeting on the 14th of May. And I had plenty of questions, but things just aren't working out because I got the date, the date right, but the time wrong. And by the time I logged on at 7, that meeting had finished. COVID number 2 is a little bit better. And I acknowledge that it borrowed my idea from this motion. I called it the COVID Support and Rescue Fund. COVID number 2 called it something similar. However, COVID number 2 falls well short of what is needed, in my opinion. Only $250,000 for rate relief. And that's if you can jump through the hoops. Most of the 3.4 million is actually funding for projects that are either already planned or already on the books. It's wrapping it around and saying, well, look, it's a stimulus and we're going to create jobs, but it's money that was already planned to be developed. So it's not something new. At that meeting on the 14th of May, of all the letters that were attached, and you saw them, there were letters pleading for support. The only one that I can see that got supported was the one for the caravan park. And I don't in any way deny their need, but the ones from the large businesses, the picture theatre, the large hotels who collectively employ an awful lot of our local people in Gawler, seem to have fallen on deaf ears. There didn't seem to be any input in that planning from the stakeholders. Gawler Business Development Group were consulted only hours before it came before the meeting. They weren't invited to put input in, and I think that just is crazy. My view is that the Town of Gawler administration don't really grasp how deep and how serious this problem is. And it's crippling businesses in this town. And it's crippling people who have lost their jobs and are struggling. And it seems overall that we're really hoping that we're not going to lose too much money as the Gawler admin, that we're really not going to make too many sacrifices. We're going to wrap some stuff up. We'll offer a little bit of support, but at the end of the day, we want to capture most of that back by increased rates down the track, or for a lot of the people, we'll get their money back if we defer their rates. And if you've heard from the business development group speak tonight, that's just not going to do it. This is deep and profound. We are going to have to do some suffering as a council. We are going to have to look at where we can make cuts. We are going to have to put together a large fund, because the benefit of that is that if we support our community and we support our businesses, we all win. We all win from that. There's less social impact because less people are suffering. And then our businesses, if we can help them through, they will rebound and they will re-employ. But we have to do a lot, and we're not doing it. It's wrapped up. It looks like we are, but when you look at it, we're not. And 250,000 jumping through hoops, it's just not good enough. We've seen it with our staff. We say that we support our staff. The staff, very few of them were able to jump through the hoop to go and work at home. And other councils like Playford, I've heard 200 almost instantly. Yet it's like we didn't trust our staff. And it's the same here. It's like our administration don't get it. And elected members, we need to take hold of this. We are the elected members. And like I said, if it's not good enough and it doesn't cut the mustard, once it's passed, the admin will just simply say, well, the council supported it. The elected members supported it. Well, elected members, we've done very little other than rubber stamp. We need a workshop where we need, forget this 5-minute business, we need an open opportunity for us to get into that budget and for us to say on behalf of our businesses and our community, we are going to establish a fund and we want input from the Gawler Business Development Group as to how we'll deploy that fund. And we need to do that in harmony with them, with the stakeholders. And that's the essence of my motion. It's us taking control and doing our job as elected members. We're not here just to rubber stamp the administration. We're here to make the decisions, there to do our bidding. And if we simply go along with what they've done in COVID 1 and 2, they'll always just say, well, that's what council chose. We haven't had any input. So I hope that you'll support my motion.
30 seconds, Ian. 30 seconds.
And we'll get the opportunity to get the staff working to, as it says here, get CEO and app to tell the staff, start making suggestions. We can start making suggestions of where we can make cuts. We are able to find awful lot of money at short notice. We've done it very recently when we found 200,000 for the contributory items. We found it out of nowhere. We're probably going to have to spend 300,000 for boundary reform. We can find money.
5 minutes,
Councillor
Turley. That's 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Is that you, Councillor Davies? You wish to second?
Yep. Look,
speak.
Yep, I'll speak. I do think that there is more to be done, and I think to some extent that was acknowledged in the motion that we already passed, was that here's, you know, a vague $2 million here, or here's, we'll move the budget back to August, acknowledging, look, there's more work to be done. And I feel like this gets more into the specifics. I think we sort of had a bit of I think it's something that's been a bit difficult to grasp in terms of what we're actually been doing at the moment, because a lot of it is quite vague. I think we sort of passed a huge, 17-part motion, and then, what it sort of got boiled down to in the sort of Facebook headlines was, here's what's happening with the rates, which I understand it's not easy to boil down. If they could boil it down, they wouldn't have sent us, staff wouldn't have sent us 30 pages of stuff if they could express it in a sentence. So, but we do need to have some more specific, we need to be able to say, here's this, here's this group we're helping, here's this group we're helping. We talked with the community and here's what we can add here. Just some more specifics, let's, to help out. So that's why I'm seconding this motion.
Thank you. Then I'll have Councillor Shanks and then Councillor Goldstone in that order. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be supporting this. I'll be speaking builder for a second. I reckon what council staff have offered up is a foundation. It was a reaction in the guidelines that they could operate in, and no disrespect to the staff in any way, but unfortunately they don't run the local businesses. And I think that the point that Kevin Fisher is making, that I'm in full support of, is it's not only about bringing them along for the ride, but it's also getting these stakeholders to direct. Between all of us, we might have some business experience. I own a small business. I know Brian's had a lot of business experience. I know Councillor Kosh. I know collectively we have. Di Fraser's been a publican. Collectively we do have a little bit of knowledge, but it's not in the recent space. We need to really tap into the asset that we have created with the Gawler Business Development Group, or assisted in creating, and really get them to assist us. We've got COVID-1, as Councillor Tooley eloquently put it. We've got COVID-2. Now let's work with the town in doing COVID-3. This is unprecedented times. We'll hopefully never come across this again. Everyone is scrambling at the moment, but we do have that foundation. So I'll be supporting this motion in hope that we can get to the right COVID insert number that the businesses and the community can respect us for.
So I'll take Councillor Goldstone and then Councillor Fraser in that order.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll actually be voting against this motion. For a start, I don't agree with the wording of point 1. But that aside, I think at the special meeting we had a good discussion and we adopted a good resolution and package. And I think that, coupled with Councillor Shanks' motion on notice, which will confirm input of the Gawler Business Development Group in terms of the parameters relating to rate remission, I generally think that we've got most things covered. I'm happy with what we've passed, and I'm happy with the proposed motion on notice, so I can't see the real need for this motion in its current format. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll take Councillor Fraser, Councillor Hughes and then Councillor Kosh.
Okay, I'll be voting against this motion, mostly because it's old hat. It was written a long time ago and we've done a lot of work on this. First of all, point 1, I totally disagree with the wording that says Gawler will not suffer any financial loss. That's correct. In point 4 about the car parking fund, there's no way we can use that, and it's not money sitting there anyway. It's just a paper figure. And then something else. I do agree with us working with the Gawler Business Development Group. Yes, and another thing down here, I saw about the community groups. I think we've worked with those, and I think they would probably be quite happy with what we're suggesting. Council is a level of government, and there's 3 levels of government, and they're all helping. Look, some of the businesses are going to fold, unfortunately, and it's really sad. And it would be lovely to go out there and just hand out money to everybody, but we can't do that. We're not in a position to do that. We can help with a hardship, with rates. I don't know, and with leases for people who we have leases with us, we can help them the same as any landlord you would hope would be helping their tenants. But yeah, it's not, Councillor Tooley, it's not so much that what you're looking for. I just think that we've dealt with this. We've still got more budget workshops to go where we can update. This COVID thing is changing daily and weekly, and I think as the budgets workshops come up, because we've extended our budget out, we will be able to handle a lot of these things. So yeah, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. So Councillor Hughes, you're next.
Yeah, I'll be voting against it. Basically, Councillor Fraser and Councillor Goldstone have covered my points, but yeah, we have moved on. Our recent motion, call it COVID-2 if you like, really does cover the points in this motion, covers point 2, covers point 3, covers point 4. It doesn't cover point 5, but I'm quite happy to support Councillor Shanks's motion that's down later tonight to support more involvement formally. We've had the informal of the business development group. Point 6 is covered, point 7 is, and yeah, we may need more than $250,000. It's still early days, as Councillor Fraser talks, and things are changing all the time with those businesses that may need help. It may be a process that goes for a number of years, unfortunately. I agree, job creation is really important, and I think that the $2 million that we've released back to look at extra projects and extra value adding to state and federal projects, I think that's really good to help support local businesses for tendering for those positions, and that's something that council can really help drive to get local jobs. And I think we are supporting community businesses. And this time frame can be quite a long time frame, I think. And yeah, I think going back to Councillor Davies, I mean, it is vague at the moment because there's a few unknowns. It's really good to hear the business development group is working closely with 26 businesses in our town. I think that's fantastic work. I think that's something in our upcoming workshop we'll pull out more, working with the business development group, exactly how council might be able to help those businesses and how we can, as a team, work together. But I just don't think this motion is helpful at this stage. It does, as sort of go back over everything else. I won't use my whole 5 minutes. I think it's all been said. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kosh?
Oh, look, I'll be voting against this, and I suppose it's the same reasons that Councillor Goldstone and Fraser and now Hughes have said. We've already really talked through all this, and from the special council meeting, we had that motion, 17 parts. I think the feedback we got was that we weren't implicit that we're going to involve the Gawler Business Development Group Board. The motion later tonight from Councillor Shanks sort of covers off on that. So realistically, we've actually moved on from this motion and essentially put in train what we could do realistically as a third tier of government to support our community. And I think unfortunately, you know, we've gone past this, so I won't be supporting it. And I'm also concerned about the wording. You know, I do get concerned when we have this sort of wording in motions. It's not a good. I don't think it's a very good look for anybody. So yeah, so I definitely won't be voting for it. Thank you.
Any other speakers? There be none. Councillor Tooley, you can close the debate.
Thank you, Mayor. The discussion on the 14th of April that COVID-2 was presented, if you look back at that, and I have watched it, the only person who asked questions of the presenter, Kevin, was Councillor Shanks. No one else asked any questions of Kevin. The debate was minimal, very, very minimal. And essentially, you don't own it. What you did was you rubber stamped. And you didn't cut into it. You didn't dissect it. You didn't look at how the money's spent. There was no commentary about this 250,000 being inadequate. There was no commentary about the criteria and how people will be supported. You didn't discuss all the letters from all the other businesses that were desperate for help. You've essentially just very quickly, within 45 minutes, you rubber stamped a huge motion that the administration had put together. What I'm saying in my motion is that we need to do our job as an elected member. I want us as elected members to embrace this and have a workshop. Forget the 5-minute rules. I want to hear you guys. I want to have a look at the budget. And I want us to create a budget that will stimulate and help our community. When we have workshops, as Councillor Fraser said, we all know what those workshops are like. Massive big spreadsheets We go through them. We talk about what's above the line, what's below the line. We're not going to go at any opportunity to single out for a decent debate for an hour or an hour and a half on COVID. We won't. We'll be looking at assets below the line, above the line. That's what we'll be dealing with in those workshops. This is a special workshop. And you've heard the Gawler Business Development Group ask for this. And this is with their input, them as a membership, open community. And we'll be sending a really good message to our community that we're taking it serious. And we as elected members are not just going to rubber stamp what the admin wants. We're going to embrace this and take hold of it and take charge of it. That's our job as elected members. And there's things we can do. We can cut expenses. We can request that our finance people start making a suggestion to us. We can cut some of our programs. And we can look at borrowings. Money has never been cheaper. Some of our member councils are borrowing money now because money is so cheap. And we shouldn't look at borrowing as a dirty word. If we look at our federal and state governments, just have a look at it. They were crying that we've achieved a $1 billion surplus and they were going to grab onto it. They printed T-shirts and mugs. Then came the bushfires. Then came COVID. And they printed money as a sovereign nation. And we're now up to something like 167 billion. And that has not created inflation because that money is stimulating the economy. Now, we're going to have to, we can't just come up with a tinkered budget down the track. We need this workshop to inject direction into that budget so that we come up with a budget that has a massive injection of support to stimulate our local economy. We'll add to that with grants. We'll add to that with money that comes our way from federal and state stimulation. But councillors, let's do our job. Let's not just leave this to a workshop or another council meeting. Let's have a workshop and bring the community in with us and the business development group. Let's look where we can find the money, and then let's ask the business development group, how can we best stimulate that small business in our town that's desperate for support? How can we help that household who is absolutely desperate because they've lost both of their breadwinners? This is the sort of stuff we've got to look at. This is not going to go away quickly. They're talking about a 5-year plan before the federal government recovers. And we should be advocating and getting our LPA to lobby the state government for an employment guarantee. We've seen the miraculous impact when the job seeker was doubled. It used to be called New Start. We should be saying to our government, and we can do this from the workshop too, we want that to continue. But you know what? We want those people engaged by councils. We'll train them. We'll engage them in planting our creek beds. We'll engage them in putting the grasses under the rusty sculptures. We can get people engaged effectively while they're getting that money.
30 seconds, Councillor Tooley. Thank you.
Sorry?
30 seconds.
20 seconds, thank you. And that's the sort of thing that we could also be advocating for. We don't want this to finish. Those people could be given all the benefits of employment while they're getting that job seeker fund and engaged by councils. And councils are some of the best placed people to be engaged and working with those community groups. Like we used to have the Green Corps until that was rejected by Abbott, I think. So all those things could be on the table in our workshop. I just hope I get the numbers to support it.
Thank you. The debate is closed. I'll put that motion. All those in favour of the motion, please vote yes. All those against, please vote no. The motion is Thank you. Now,
Mayor, can I call a division, please?
You certainly can. Councillor Tooley has called a division. All those in favour of the motion, please vote yes now, and I'll call your name out. We have Councillor Davies, Councillor Vallelonga, Councillor Shanks and Councillor Tooley. All those against, please vote now, and I'll call your name out, please. Thank you. Councillor Hughes, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Goldstone, Councillor Kosh and Councillor Samble. The motion is lost. Thank you. Now, Councillor Fraser, you have a notice of motion. Where are you, Di? There you are. If you'd like to present your motion, please. Thank you.
I'm asking for a raised medium strip at the junction of Lyndock Road and Sunnydale Avenue, going into Sunnydale Avenue, and one going around the bend by the wheat sheaf. With the opening of the Gawler East Link Road, they're saying the traffic on Sunnydale Avenue is going to increase. It's already dangerous coming around that corner. Cars coming from Gawler cut the corner, they cross over onto the wrong side of the road. So the cars that are coming around the wheat sheaf meet them just about head on. And the same going around the bend, going south along Sunnydale, so going up the hill, the same thing, they cross over. And you get, you know, I'm trying to think of the word, you get the big trucks and things going along there. If there's an accident, it's going to be a fatal, because it is really dangerous. And when the cars are coming off Lyndock Road into Sunnydale, they put their foot down because they're usually trying to beat a car that's about to come over the train line. So they usually put their foot down. So if they're on the wrong side of the road, they haven't got a hope of stopping. So I have spoken to Mr. Delaney about this, and he seems to think that they'll probably be able to find this. It won't be a budget bid, but I think it could save a life, or maybe, you know, a whole family's life, really, if this happened.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Now I have 3 hands up, but Councillor Kosh got his hand up. I have 4 hands up, but Councillor Kosh got his hand up first. Now, I'm assuming, Councillor Kosh, you wish to second. Is that correct? I'll just
yes, I wish to second and wish to speak.
I'll just one moment. I'll just check what the others wish to do. Councillor Samble, are you wanting to second or ask a question?
Well, I had my hand up first, and I wanted to second it because I think what Councillor Fraser.
Hang on. Councillor Kosh had his hand up first because my screen tells me so.
It mustn't be working. Yeah.
No, I've taken him off because he put his hand up first. So if you want a second, I'll go back to Councillor Kosh. But before I do, Councillor Shanks and Councillor Valalonga, did you want a second or did you want to ask a question? And I'll take your question if it's a question once Councillor Kosh has spoken. Do you want to ask a question, Councillor Shanks?
Now, boys, I reckon we'll get a seconder here. I didn't have a question. I was just going to second or speak to.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Valalonga, Jim, did you want a second or did you want to ask a question?
No, I'm going to vote against this. This is totally
okay, well, before you speak against, I'll ask Councillor Kosh. I'll come back to you. You'll be first cab off the rank. Councillor Koch, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Look, this is something that we need to do. That corridor is very, very dangerous. As Councillor Fraser was saying, as cars come from Lyndock, they come over the railway line. If they want to turn left, you know, they sometimes got cars behind them, so they want to zoom around quickly. And also cars going, you know, heading east, want to turn down Sunnydale. They have to, if there's a car coming, they have to prop. And it's an 80k area there, so they have to prop and wait. There's cars coming everywhere, so really you need to slow all the traffic down, so it's a bit safer. And the other issue is there's no footpaths on Sunnydale Avenue. And at the recent workshop we had on beautification, I think it was, and we talked about footpaths, and they said we don't have footpaths only on small cul-de-sacs. Well, this is actually a really big, busy road, so. You know, we walk around this area a fair bit, and there's plenty of times when cars come zooming around and there's an issue there. So by putting in a medium strip, that will slow vehicles down, probably potentially stop vehicles from coming down that road because it might push them sort of down to Cheek Avenue, for example. So I think this is a good move, and it'd be good to get this in early to preempt the opening of the link road. Also, the other thing is that if you put that in, cars may turn up at Sandy Creek and come along Davies and Barramoral that way. So it's probably a good move to get it done early. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So now I will go to Councillor Shanks. Did you want to speak to this? You did? Okay. You're next to Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, I'll be speaking for this. I just wanted to offer just a word to put in it though. The motion as it sits reads that council staff investigate the possibility of placing. I wouldn't mind putting a slash in there and say cost, so possibility and cost of placing raised medium strip, just so that when we do have a report come back, we're pretty clear on what financial we're committing to. But yeah, look, I'm happy to investigate this. You know, we're doing our due diligence by just sort of looking into Councillor Fraser's concerns. She lives local to the area. She talks to people in that area quite regularly. You know, doing our due diligence, it definitely is worth something looking into. So I'll be voting for it.
Thank you. Now, before I ask the mover and seconder about those slight changes, I might just ask Mr. Delina, have you got an indicative cost? It sounds like you've had a conversation with Councillor Fraser.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly have. I've spoken with staff as well. This we have existing budgets that do cater for this. We've got a road safety, a traffic road safety budget in our current budget every year that we allocate about broadly $25,000 for exactly these sorts of investigations throughout the township. So the intent was not to present a report back to council, that we would just get on, investigate, undertake the improvement as required and implement it within that existing budget. It easily fall within the realms of what we do on a day in, day out basis.
Okay, thank you. What this motion says is that staff will investigate the possibility of placing. Okay, right. Councillor Samble, you are next.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Karen. I'm certainly happy to hear what Sam had to say there, but this item or this suggestion has been brought up at least 3 times in my knowledge. And one of the problems that lies with it, I don't know how far we're going with amalgamation, but probably dead in the water, but basically half of the road is the boundary between Gawler and Barossa. I think Mr. Delina knows that that's where the boundary is of Gawler and Barossa, and that was the reason that I believe it was stopped last time, was because Barossa and Gawler didn't talk together and get the project done. So is that still the same case, if I may ask Mr. Delina on that? Is that the boundary of Gawler, half of the road?
Sam?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The actual intersection with Lyndock Road and Sunnydale Avenue is entirely within the town of Gawler. It's really it's at the bend that the actual boundary kicks in. So the treatment that would occur around the bend would need to be undertaken in consultation with our friends at the Barossa Council. I don't think it's going to be problematic, but it's certainly that portion of this motion would require the Barossa to come to the table, which I don't think, just knowing the situation and the type of work they're proposing here not being that significant, but addressing improving the safety at this intersection, I can't see it being problematic.
So thank you, Mr. Delina, for that clarification. Now, mover and seconder, there was a question from Councillor Shanks about slash the cost. Are you happy to include that, or do you think it's not necessary? I'll just unmute you, Di. There you go.
Well, Mr. Delina said it doesn't need to come back to council, so therefore I don't really think it needs to be in there.
Okay, all right. So I'll leave that as it is, Councillor Shanks, at this stage. Now, Councillor Vallelonga, you wish to speak? You have the floor. And then Councillor after that.
Look, I just hope to change the councillor's mind. I can guarantee you, as soon as you put those medium strips up, that there's going to be a major accident there. So I'm not going to be voting against this, because this is going to be a very, very dangerous situation that we're going to be doing here. So really think about it. Somebody hits one of those curbs, it's going to be a major accident. So it's been like that for years. There have been no major accidents there. So really think about it. I'm not going to vote for an accident.
Thank you, Councillor Vallelonga. Now, Councillor Tooley, you have the floor, and then Councillor Stone, and then Councillor Shanks.
Nick, I'd like to just ask a question to the motion. My question goes to Mr. Delina, because I'm not sure if I'm interpreting this correctly. Raised medium strips. just define that for me. Is this at the edges of the road, or is this in the middle of the road to separate the traffic? Is it similar to what happened in front of the Southern Hotel, where those large concrete sections were put in at the bend? Could you just first of all please define, so I'm clear on what you're talking about here as medium strips?
So Sam, wouldn't my understanding of that is, Mr. Delena, that, and thank you for that question, Councillor Tooley, that raised median strips in the middle of the road and slightly raised. Have I got that correct? You're nodding your head. Hang on, sorry.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Sorry.
That's exactly. Yes, Madam Mayor, that's exactly right. Staff would undertake a review of the intersection and determine what the appropriate treatment be, whether it be a raised concrete barrier separating the either lane, or whether it be effectively some other treatment, those yellow concrete, raised concrete pavement bars in a pavement bar treatment, or a raised concrete strip per se, but separating the two travelled lanes along Sunnydale Avenue.
So should that read median rather than medium, or have I got that wrong?
Median, yeah, IAN.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, Kate, yeah, thank you. Now, thank you for that. Councillor Goldstone, Councillor Shanks and Councillor Tooley, in that order. Did you take your hand off, Ian? Was that, yeah. Had you not finished?
No, may I, if you remember, I said I had a question and I was going to speak. But
okay, no problem. You've got the floor.
Okay, so I can speak now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, look, if this motion had been, as I thought it was, to investigate, I could have supported it, but I'm definitely not going to support us just going ahead with it, because I haven't seen any data on crashes. I hear Councillor Fraser saying that she's aware of dangerous behaviour. I probably don't drive that area as much as Councillor Fraser does, but I do it often enough, and I've never witnessed any dangerous behaviour. And normally we make these decisions based on data, and we've had these many times. Mr. Delenn has answered many times and said, well, I hear what you're saying, Councillor, but this is the actual data and the number of cars travelling on the road, and all of that has influenced what we've done. So when we changed the end of Carlton Road, where Carlton joined the main street, we did that based on data. You remember there was a medium strip put on Tulloch Road in front of Aldi that caused a nightmare for people. And we got complaint after complaint, and people saw accident after accident because people could not turn both ways. It presented a major problem, and that had to be removed. And what we're suggesting here is we're just going to give license to council to go, because Councillor Fraser says it's needed, and it's echoed by Councillor Kosh. Well, we're going to spend some money and whack some concrete in the middle of the road. And I agree with Councillor Vallelonga. We could be creating a very dangerous situation. I've always thought we've been guided by DIPTI and by proper road science when we've come to put things like this in the roads. You remember some of the upgrades we did and the proposals we put for crossings. We had people say, no, I think we have to have a crossing put here for pedestrians. And DIPTI came back and said, listen, these are the regulations. It has to be offset because of these rules. If you change it, you will wear all of the risk. And what did we do? We backed off straight away. We said, okay, all of those designs, we will comply with the Australian standard. Now, if this report was to do as I thought and said, we're going to look at the Australian standard, we're going to look at the data, and then we're going to decide whether it really is a good move, I'm for it. But no way am I going to support a motion that's basically one councillor saying it's needed, and then our staff jumping at it and saying, yep, we got the fund, we'll do it. No, and I'll be calling a division on this, and I'll be joining Councillor Vallelonga. And if issues come up, you guys can wear it. A report with data, that's the proper way to go. But to give a green light to go ahead and do this because Councillor Fraser says it's needed, I'm sorry, she may be right, but she may be wrong.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Shanks, you're next, and then Councillor Goldstone, you're next, and then Councillor Shanks after that. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, look, I fully support the concept and the intent of this motion, but I'm a bit confused about the wording, as the wording does say simply to investigate it. It doesn't authorise the work to go ahead. And like Councillor Tooley, I also agree that a design and costing should come back with a report to council. I will fully support it if and when it comes back, because I agree. I lived off of Sunnyhow Road for a few years, and I saw exactly the issues that Councillor Fraser raised. But the motion as put simply asks for it to be investigated. It doesn't authorise the work to proceed. So I hope that I will vote for it if it means that we will be getting a report back with the concept, design and costing of it. Otherwise, I'd have to vote against it.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Shanks, you're next.
So just given the feedback here from elected members, the way that I look at it is Councillor Fraser has an opinion, which it's a very educated one, being a local to the area. Councillor Valonga has one that conflicts it. Do we believe that the motion, the way that it sits, chucking in a and cost investigation to report back to council, so we can actually see some data, as Councillor Tooley pointed out and Councillor Goldstein did, would be prudent in the way that we go about it, and consistent with some of the decisions we make. Because you know, I want some money to chuck at a playground. You know, it's, if we can investigate the way we go about it, I think that's the way the motion read to me, and I'd like to see some costings around that. Minor as they may seem, you know, 10 grand, 15 grand right now is something that we need to justify.
Put that to the mover. Are you happy for that wording to go in, Councillor Fraser, or do you wish to?
I have no intentions for it really. The motion does say to investigate, so maybe investigate and report, come back to council.
So Di, can you see the wording that Kate's put as a suggested wording in yellow there on your screen?
Yes, that's fine.
Happy with that as mover?
Yeah.
You happy, seconder? You happy with that? Yep, the seconder's happy. So we'll incorporate that wording in. Be incorporated in the motion. Any other discussion? Councillor Fraser, you can close the debate.
I don't live up this way anymore, but I lived there for nearly 30 years, and it is a very dangerous corner. I don't know how many times I nearly had a head-on coming from home around the corner where people have been on the wrong side of the road. So yes, I do have a lot of knowledge of it, and it is really just an investigation, but I think it could save lives.
Thank you. The debate's closed. I'll put that motion. All those in favour of the motion, please click yes. All those against, please click no. Okay. Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to confidential adjourned reports. Now, I'm planning to get through all these adjourned items. I know they're confidential, but I believe it's important that we need to deal with these matters and get them dealt with. So for people who are watching, we do this next section, there's recommendations to go into confidence, which means that you won't be able to view that section, and then we'll come back out of confidence once we've dealt with these few matters that are in the agenda. So, councillors, I'm happy to accept. So the first one is 6.6, Business Innovation Hub Management Agreement Update, and there is a recommendation to go into confidence. Councillor Davies, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm happy to move it.
Thank you. Oh, now, Councillor Shanks, you've gone out for a cup of tea. Right, okay, no worries. Happy to move. Do I have a seconder that we go into confidence? Councillor Hughes, you happen to second? Yep. Councillor Davies, do you want to speak at all?
Yeah, just to say that the reason going into confidence is that when we have an ongoing, contract or management agreement, then it just makes sense to do that in private.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, councillors, I'll put that motion. All those in favour of going into confidence, please click yes. All those against, please click no. The motion is carried. Thank you.